But you still had to play. I mean, all the
Yeah.
musicianship was. You're talking top musicians.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a piano player. I can't play half that. You know,
No.
that stuff. You know, going through Targus trilogy is like, no, I don't even think about doing that.
Well, you want to see how difficult that is to get a guitar player to play things like that. And, you know, that's what I've done now. I've
But you
to
also
move that
turned
over.
upside down too, if I remember right.
Oh, no, I revolved. I think that was
revolved.
Tommy Lee who turned upside down.
You?
I revolved, yeah. Yeah, we obviously we had various effects like that which we used in the music to, you know, we were a great believer in, number one, the music has to be solid. Number two, the sound has to be the best it can be. Conceptually, you've got to have something, i.e. in this particular situation, it was an orchestra, and we thought if we could give something which would be pleasing to the eye, whether it be a revolving stage, a flying piano, a guy standing on a carpet, or whatever, we should add it. Why not? It doesn't detract, and it could help, because we've got the essence right, which is the music. So that's kind of how we approach things, really.
Now, there's certain pivotal points in life where one just says, you know, this isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
How honest were you with yourself in that? Are there points that you feel it, but you're not honoring that feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened?
The first time that the band finished, it started in 70, finished in late 78, we just stopped. We've never fallen out. We've never had a fight. We've never really argued over anything except music. I mean, Emerson, Lake and Palmer would argue over 2 bars of music for about 6 months. Simple as that, you know. It's not complicated, that's the way it would be. And when we finished at the end of the 70s, we had been working quite steadily for 8 years, and we'd achieved an enormous amount. And possibly, you know, the social life that we each had suffered a little bit. We realised that, but that was fine. You know, we realised this was our chance, and we took it. And we invested in it, i.e. with the orchestra. So when it finished up, it wasn't a case of, well, that's it. We just stopped playing. We said, well, we'll do something later on. Well, that later on turned into 12 years. And during that period, I did various things with Asia. I also had another band I put together called PM. Greg Lake did solo tours and whatever. Keith wrote some film music. When we came back together again in 91, I believe it was, we went straight into the studio and we started making albums. It was at that stage that really, possibly we shouldn't have done that, because the albums that we made, In the Hot Seat, Black Moon, are probably not the best albums that we ever made. They weren't the most inventive. There wasn't the air of creation around those albums that we had on Brain Salad, Sergi, for example. Black Moon wasn't too bad. In the Hot Seat didn't work at all. So there's a problem. Even when you're that old and that experienced and had that much success, you can be making an album, and because you're so close to it, you don't realise it's not good enough. Something goes wrong, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's to do with age, or it's to do with people just not thinking the same anymore, being apart for 12 years. Could be any number of reasons, and that's what goes on. When the creativity was at its highest, at its very best, for example, let's say Brain Salad Surgery, because I always, you know, refer to that as being one of my favourite albums. It was like the most natural thing you could have. It was like brushing your teeth. It was just so easy to make, and the ideas would just flow out. Yet the albums that weren't good, and we made quite a few albums which weren't good. You know, it's very hard to make great albums all the time. The ones that weren't very good, when I look back over the years, they were the hardest to make as well. So subconsciously, we must have all known something was going on.
There is a flow of chemistry between everyone.
Yeah, you have to understand that we're completely different individuals. You know, we don't go out drinking together. We very rarely meet up with our families. I think maybe twice in about 35 years. We don't do dinners together, very rare. I think the last time I had dinner with Greg Lake would be probably about 8 months ago, a year ago. I've seen him since, but you know, we don't socialise. So we're not like, how can I put it to you, like U2, who's incredibly successful. They're a band that went to school together, lived in the same area. They're like a gang. Emerson, Lake and Palmer isn't a gang. It's 3 individuals There's one guy from the north of England, myself, and two guys from the south. And when we play, there's chemistry. Always has been. If we were to have some equipment downstairs now, we all walk down and play, it would be good.
What would you play?
I don't know what we would play, but it would be good. The most important thing is whatever it was, it would be good.
Let's talk about something that I understand you're doing. You're teaching with or coaching children that have some sort
Yes.
of disabilities.
Yes.
Could you tell us more about that and how that came about?
Yeah, the teaching of children with special needs has been going on for about 4 years. I've had a company called Drum Clinics UK, which I formed purely for my teaching activities. And in this company, I hold what we call master classes for drummers, maybe 20, 30 drummers at a time. And I have various things which I teach them. And because there's so few of them, it's a hands-on operation, so I can get around and I can really give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I also do what they call drum clinics, which basically is when a guy sets up his drums in a hall. You have anything from 100 to 200 people, whatever you want, and the guy just goes up on stage and he just plays all of his best things he can. He basically shows off. So I do that as well, because we're all egotistical in some shape or form. But on the serious side of education, and I've been doing it, I'm into my 4th year now, I had the opportunity to teach at a private school in England for children, for boys who were from incredibly wealthy families. And they all had drum sets at home. There's maybe about 8 or 9. I was invited to teach. I said, well, I don't really teach at schools. That's not what I do. I said, they can come along to a master class or a drum clinic. Anyway, I got convinced into doing. I thought, yes, okay, fine. Went along to the school, lovely English school, and it was quite rewarding. And 2 or 3 of the students, there's only 8 of them, were good. Had promised they could definitely turn it into a profession if they wanted. After I sat down with the main sort of guy there who was in charge of the education, and I said, how do things work in your business? I was just interested to know. I know that education is like really important, and music is the first thing to go in any school. When they cut back on the music. That's the first thing, which is a shame. And obviously that affects me. I don't like to hear that. Anyway, he said, well, we have our problems, but everything's fine. He said, really? He said, it's the low end that gets hit the hardest. And I said, what's that? He said, children with special needs. So I said, okay, that's interesting. And what's the worst of that group of children with special needs? He said, I would say the blind and the deaf. I said, is that right? He said, yeah, there's very few group activities for them. And any group activities that they do play a part in are probably for 3 or 4 kids at a time. There's nothing any bigger than that. But they don't have many programs for them. So I thought about that, and because I only teach for the month of April every year, I can only really give 1 month a year my time. I went back home and I started to think about it, and about 2 or 3 months later I had an idea. So I wrote it down and I developed the idea. April came around the next year, and I made a call to the Deaf Society of Great Britain and said I would like to explain who I was and sent the necessary paraphernalia off to them so they would understand I just wasn't a normal drummer, who I was, I said I'd like to try and get involved with teaching deaf children. And they said, well, that'll be fine, what did you have in mind? And I tried to explain. They said they didn't understand. So that's how far back they were. So I realised that this could never have been developed by anyone there other than myself coming in, because I had an idea and they didn't pick it up at all. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it was set up for me to teach 50 deaf children at a school called Hodge Hill, actually in my hometown, funnily enough, in Birmingham. And they were all, the children were all delivered on 2 buses from their special school to this large hall, which I said I had to have. It had to have windows down the one side, it had to have a certain amount of chairs, which I could put in a kind of horseshoe sort of design, layered, and I could have aisles. I could break the chairs up into 3 groups, and I could walk up each aisle. And this is all part of my method, if I wanted to, and the ventilation was good.